One accidental collision was enough to bring an entire ballroom to a standstill. Emily Carter, a blind, curvy woman who had spent years being underestimated, never imagined she had just walked into the dangerous world of Nathan Moretti, the most feared mafia boss in Boston. As hidden enemies closed in and a deadly conspiracy unfolded beneath Harbor Crown, the woman everyone dismissed would become the only person capable of saving the man everyone feared. But why would one of America's most ruthless mafia bosses look at a complete stranger and warn an entire room, "Don't touch my wife," before she even knew who he was? Don't touch my wife. Nathan Moretti's calm command cut through the grand ballroom more sharply than any raised voice ever could. Beneath crystal chandeliers overlooking Boston Harbor, every armed guard lowered one hand toward a concealed weapon, while every wealthy guest stopped breathing. Politicians froze beside marble columns. Billionaires quietly stepped back. No one questioned Nathan Moretti when he spoke. Emily Carter had no idea why the room had suddenly become so silent. I'm sorry," she said softly, tightening her grip on her white cane. "Someone bumped into me. Did I hurt you?" She couldn't see the expensive black suit, now stained with dark red wine. She couldn't see the shattered crystal glass scattered across the polished floor. Most of all, she couldn't see the dozens of black vehicles parked outside, or the men whose loyalty had built one of the most feared criminal empires on the East Coast. Nathan studied the woman standing inches away. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't begging. She sounded genuinely worried about a stranger. Before he could answer, Emily tilted her head slightly. Her expression changed. "Please don't move," she whispered. Several guards instantly raised their pistols again. Nathan didn't. "What is it?" he asked. She slowly tapped the marble floor with the tip of her cane. "The vibration," she murmured. "It's wrong." Confused murmurs spread across the ballroom. Emily lowered herself carefully, placing one hand against the cool stone. Years earlier, before darkness entered her life, she had designed acoustic warning systems for transportation terminals. Her ears had learned to replace her eyes. "This section is hollow," she said. "It wasn't built that way." A man wearing a maintenance badge suddenly turned and rushed toward the nearest exit. Nathan noticed him at exactly the same moment his chief of security did. The man reached beneath his jacket. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and scattered as guards intercepted him before he reached the doors. In the confusion, Nathan stepped directly in front of Emily, shielding her without touching her. His voice remained steady. "Don't touch my wife." Every weapon lowered. Emily frowned, confused by the strange words. "Wife?" she whispered. Nathan never looked away from the fleeing technician. "No one leaves this ballroom," he ordered. As security surrounded the suspect, an engineer carefully lifted one marble panel beneath the exact spot where Nathan had been standing only moments earlier. Hidden below it was a sophisticated device connected to a silent timer. Emily's accidental collision hadn't endangered the most powerful man in Boston. It had pulled him one step away from something far worse. 3 weeks earlier, Harbor Crown had been nothing more than another contract sitting inside a worn leather folder on Emily Carter's kitchen table. Her apartment in South Boston overlooked an aging train line where steel wheels echoed through the neighborhood every evening. She lived there with her mother, who never treated her blindness as a reason to stop dreaming. 5 years earlier, Emily had designed acoustic safety systems for airports and hospitals. Then a construction accident stole her sight. Within months, the engineering firm replaced her. Her fiancé, Ryan Blake, promised to stay until one quiet afternoon when he admitted he couldn't build a future around someone who needed protecting. The words hurt more than the darkness ever had. Emily never returned to that office. Instead, she opened a small consulting business that specialized in making public buildings safer for people with disabilities. Most clients smiled politely, praised her courage, then ignored her professional recommendations. To them, she was inspiring, rarely competent. That was why Harbor Crown mattered. The project could save her struggling business and prove that experience mattered more than eyesight. On the morning of her first inspection, Emily buttoned a simple navy jacket and reached for her white cane. Her mother squeezed her hand before she left. "Remember who you are," Emily smiled. "I always do." Downtown Boston shimmered beneath cold autumn sunlight as black luxury cars streamed toward the waterfront. Harbor Crown towered above the docks, all polished glass and polished ambition. Inside the lobby, expensive shoes crossed marble floors while executives hurried between meetings. Emily heard someone whisper nearby. "She's the accessibility consultant." Another voice answered quietly. "I expected someone different." Emily pretended not to notice. She had heard those words in different forms for years. The receptionist finally approached. "Ms. Carter, the project director is waiting upstairs." As the elevator doors opened, Emily stepped inside without hesitation. She had come to inspect a building. She had no idea she was about to walk into the life of the most dangerous man in Boston. The conference room overlooked Boston Harbor through walls of polished glass. Engineers, contractors, and executives filled every chair before Emily quietly entered with her white cane. Conversations faded for only a moment before whispers replaced them. "So, that's the consultant?" Vanessa Cole didn't bother hiding her disappointment. "We hired an engineering specialist," she said with a practiced smile. "I wasn't expecting a motivational speaker." A few people laughed softly. Emily simply placed her equipment case on the table. "I'm here to inspect the emergency systems." Vanessa folded her arms. "They've already passed every required test." "Then another inspection shouldn't be a problem." The room became uncomfortably quiet. Standing near the back, unnoticed by Emily, Nathan Moretti listened without introducing himself. He wanted to see how this woman handled pressure before revealing who owned Harbor Crown. Emily asked for one unusual request. "Please turn off the background music." Several engineers exchanged puzzled looks. "What difference would that make?" one asked. "I need to hear the building." After a reluctant nod, the music stopped. Air vents hummed. Elevators moved somewhere overhead. Emily rested her fingertips against a steel support beam, then closed her eyes out of habit rather than necessity. She listened. Seconds passed. Then she frowned. "The evacuation signal reaches the East Corridor late." Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Our system was installed by the best company in the country." Emily remained calm. "I believe there's a delay of about 4 seconds. Someone laughed openly. Nathan finally spoke. "If you're wrong," she turned toward his voice without knowing who he was, "then I lose this contract. And if you're right," she answered without hesitation, "someone else could lose their life." Nathan held her gaze for a long moment before looking toward his chief engineer. "Open the control panel." Vanessa's confident smile disappeared. Technicians removed the protective cover, exposing rows of wiring. Minutes later, the room fell silent again. A relay module had been replaced with a cheaper component. Someone had also forged the final approval signature. Nathan's expression hardened. He wasn't looking at the damaged equipment anymore. He was studying the woman everyone else had underestimated. For the first time in years, someone had uncovered a threat inside his empire before his own people had seen it. And somewhere inside Harbor Crown, the person responsible had just realized Emily Carter was becoming a very dangerous problem. The damaged relay sat on the conference table while silence settled over the room. Nathan dismissed everyone except the senior engineers. Vanessa remained perfectly composed, but the slight pause before she answered his questions did not escape him. Emily quietly packed her equipment. "I've finished today's inspection." Nathan stepped forward. "I haven't introduced myself." She offered a polite smile. "No, sir. I'm Nathan Moretti." For the first time that day, The room became completely still. Emily recognized the name. She had heard it on the news often enough. Instead of changing her tone, she simply nodded. "Then this is your building?" "It is." "I hope you'll protect the people inside it." Nathan almost smiled. "I'd like you to continue this project." Emily hesitated. "Under 3 conditions." Vanessa's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. Nathan folded his arms. "I'm listening." "I receive full access to every engineering report." "Done." "No one edits my findings." "Agreed." Emily paused before speaking again. "And no employee loses a job because it's convenient. If someone made a mistake, find the truth before finding someone to blame." The request surprised everyone. Nathan studied her for several seconds. "You believe that's how I operate?" "I don't know how you operate," Emily answered calmly. "I'm telling you how I'll work." Before Nathan could reply, shouting echoed from the hallway. A frightened maintenance worker stood surrounded by supervisors who accused him of replacing the faulty relay. The young man insisted he had only installed what he had been given. Emily turned toward his trembling voice. "May I see the component?" Someone placed it carefully into her hands. She traced the manufacturer code with her fingertips. "This wasn't purchased through Harbor Crown's approved supplier," she said. "The serial numbers don't match. Whoever ordered this wanted someone else to take the blame." Nathan's eyes shifted toward Vanessa, only for an instant, but she noticed. "So," Nathan said quietly, "the wrong man was about to pay for someone else's crime." Emily handed the relay back. "Truth is always cheaper than replacing innocent people." Nathan looked at her with growing respect. Across the room, Vanessa slipped her phone into her pocket and sent a single message. "She knows too much." The days that followed settled into an unexpected routine. Emily arrived before sunrise, walking through Harbor Crown while the buildings still echoed with empty hallways and distant waves striking the docks below. She greeted every custodian by name, helped an older electrician organize tools he could no longer see clearly without his glasses, and quietly replaced temporary paper signs with raised markers so blind visitors could find emergency exits without asking for help. Nathan noticed everything. He said very little. One evening, he found Emily kneeling beside a frightened janitor whose cleaning cart had rolled down a service ramp. "You stayed late just for this?" he asked. She smiled. "No one should finish work feeling invisible." The answer followed Nathan long after she left. His own nights were different. From the windows of his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, sleep remained an impossible stranger. Every sharp clang from the shipyards pulled him back to the explosion that had taken his father and younger brother. He still woke before dawn, convinced he could hear twisted steel collapsing into fire. Emily recognized the exhaustion the next morning before he spoke. "You didn't sleep again." Nathan stopped. "How could you know?" "Your breathing is shallower today," she replied, "and you're carrying your shoulders too high." She unpacked a small speaker from her bag. "I made something." Soft harbor waves blended with distant gulls, steady rain, and a slow heartbeat hidden beneath the music. It helps people whose minds never stop listening for danger. Nathan stood motionless as the sounds filled the office. For the first time in years, the tightness across his chest eased. "I should pay you for this," he said quietly. Emily shook her head. "You already did." "I haven't. You trusted my work." He looked at her with quiet disbelief. Very few people had ever asked him for respect instead of money. Later that afternoon, they crossed an unfinished section of the building together. Nathan instinctively reached toward her arm, then stopped. "May I?" Emily smiled and placed her hand lightly on his offered forearm. "Thank you for asking." High above the harbor, Vanessa watched through the glass walls of the executive office. Nathan Moretti had never asked permission from anyone. Until Emily Carter. And in that single moment, Vanessa realized she was no longer competing for Nathan's attention. She was fighting to protect a secret that Emily was getting dangerously close to uncovering. The change began quietly. Emily's security badge suddenly stopped opening doors she had entered every day. Inspection schedules were moved without notice. Technical files disappeared from the shared system only hours before she needed them. Whenever she asked polite questions, someone always blamed a computer error. She knew better. Nathan noticed the delays, but assumed they were ordinary construction problems. Vanessa always had an explanation ready, delivered with calm confidence and flawless timing. "Large projects are messy," she would say. "We'll sort everything out." Emily never argued. Instead, she kept taking notes. One rainy evening, as she stepped outside her small office, a sleek black sports car pulled alongside the curb. The driver's door opened, and a familiar voice called her name. "Emily." She froze. Ryan Blake. Years had softened his voice, but not the memory attached to it. "I heard you're working on Harbor Crown," he said. "I am. I've thought about you." Emily smiled politely. "I haven't spent much time thinking about you." An awkward silence settled between them while rain tapped softly against the sidewalk. "I made mistakes," Ryan admitted. "I was scared." "You left," Emily answered. "Those are different things." Before she could walk away, he stepped closer. "I represent one of Harbor Crown's investors now. Maybe we could have dinner and talk." Emily unfolded her cane. "I already know everything I need to know." She turned and walked toward the subway entrance without looking back. Ryan watched her disappear, then reached into his coat pocket. Hidden inside was a small digital recorder. He pressed one button. Across town, Vanessa answered his call before the first ring ended. "Did she trust you?" "No." "She doesn't have to," Vanessa replied. "She only has to keep talking." The next morning, Nathan found Emily reviewing maintenance invoices alone in the archive room. "You came in early." "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I." She smiled faintly. "Then maybe both of us are chasing answers." Nathan looked at the stack of documents beside her. "What are you searching for?" Emily rested one hand on a shipment log. "The replacement relay. It didn't arrive through Harbor Crown's approved supplier." Nathan's expression changed. "How do you know?" "Because someone forgot to remove one shipping code." For the second time, she had uncovered something his own investigators had overlooked. Behind the closed archive door, neither of them noticed a tiny recording device hidden beneath the table. Someone was listening to every word. 2 days later, Emily and Nathan descended into Harbor Crown's unfinished service tunnels to inspect the emergency power lines feeding the waterfront complex. The air smelled of damp concrete and salt water drifting in from the harbor. Their footsteps echoed through the narrow passage while distant machinery hummed above them. Halfway through the inspection, every light vanished. The tunnel fell into complete darkness. Workers shouted somewhere ahead. A heavy steel door slammed shut behind them with a hollow crash. Nathan reached instinctively for his flashlight, but it failed to respond. For one brief moment, his breathing changed. Emily heard it immediately. "Nathan?" "I'm fine." He wasn't. A sharp metallic clang echoed through the tunnel. Nathan froze. The sound was almost identical to the twisted steel that had screamed through the night his father and younger brother died in the explosion at the docks. His heartbeat quickened as old memories pushed against the present. Emily stepped closer without touching him. "Listen to me instead," she said gently. "Forget what you remember. Hear what's here." He closed his eyes. "What do you hear?" "Water." "Good. What else?" "A ventilation fan." "Keep going." "A loose cable." "And your voice." Her calm rhythm slowly pulled him back. Emily knelt and placed her fingertips against the tunnel wall. "The airflow is stronger to our left," she whispered. "There's another exit." Nathan trusted her without question. She counted each step, following faint echoes that bounced differently across unfinished concrete. Several minutes later, they reached a maintenance door. Nathan forced it open, and pale afternoon light spilled into the tunnel. Fresh air rushed inside. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Nathan looked at her. "You guided me out." Emily smiled. "You would have done the same for me." When they returned to the surface, Nathan quietly said, "Move into my estate. It will be safer." Emily shook her head. "I won't trade one dangerous prison for a beautiful one." He stared at her, surprised by the honesty. Instead of arguing, he nodded. "I'll respect your decision." As Emily turned toward the parking area, something caught the tip of her cane beside the tunnel door. She bent carefully and picked up a smear of thick industrial grease. Her fingers paused. "I've touched this before." Nathan frowned. "Where?" She looked toward the silent tunnel. "I don't know yet." But somewhere deep inside her memory, that unmistakable machine oil was already leading them toward a truth buried for 10 years. A week before Harbor Crown's grand opening, the atmosphere inside the executive offices changed overnight. Security officers hurried through the hallways carrying sealed folders, while senior managers whispered behind closed doors. Nathan's chief of security entered the boardroom with a grim expression. "The Harbor Crown security plans have been leaked." Silence settled across the room. Large screens flickered to life, displaying confidential blueprints, emergency routes, and private access codes now sitting in the hands of a rival crime family. Vanessa slowly stood. "We traced every file." She pressed another button. Emily's employee ID appeared on the screen. Gasps spread around the table. "There has to be a mistake," one engineer murmured. Vanessa calmly revealed more evidence. Logan Records carried Emily's credentials. A recent payment had been deposited into her company's account. Finally, an audio recording played through the speakers. Nathan recognized Emily's voice. "Nathan can't control everything forever." The sentence sounded cold. Emily's face turned pale. "I never said that." Ryan stepped forward, dressed in an expensive suit as legal counsel for one of Harbor Crown's investors. "After her accident," he said carefully, "Emily sometimes struggled under pressure. I hoped those days were behind her." She stared toward his voice in disbelief. "You know that's not true." Nathan remained silent. His instincts told him something felt wrong, but exposing his growing investigation could drive the real traitor into hiding. At last, he spoke. "Ms. Carter, your access to Harbor Crown is suspended until this investigation is complete." The word struck harder than any accusation. Emily slowly removed her security badge and placed it on the polished table. "I trusted you to look for the truth." Nathan lowered his eyes, but said nothing. She took one careful step toward the door before stopping. "You learned to ask before taking my arm," she said quietly. "I wish you had learned to ask before judging my character." The room remained silent as she walked away. Nathan watched the elevator doors close. For the first time since meeting Emily Carter, protecting his empire had cost him the trust of the only person who had never wanted anything from it. Emily returned to her small office in South Boston before sunrise. By noon, 3 clients had canceled their contracts. Local news repeated the same story. The Harbor Crown consultant accused of leaking confidential plans. She switched off the television, locked the door, and refused to let shame decide her future. Instead, she opened every backup file she had ever saved. Her screen reader filled the quiet room with its steady mechanical voice, while rain tapped softly against the windows. Emily replayed the recording Vanessa had presented at the meeting. She ignored the words and listened to everything behind them. A low horn, 3 short chimes, a pause, then another horn. Her fingers tightened around the desk. "That's not Harbor Crown." She searched old engineering notes until she found it. The pattern belonged to a shipping warehouse on the eastern docks, where warning bells echoed every 12 seconds because of the narrow channel between two cargo piers. Ryan had asked to meet her there, not to apologize, to record her. By evening, Emily visited someone she trusted, former systems engineer Grace Holloway, who had quietly resigned from Harbor Crown months earlier. Grace listened without interrupting before sliding a worn folder across the table. "I kept copies," she whispered. "Vanessa ordered us to change suppliers. Anyone who questioned it was transferred or dismissed." Inside were invoices from shell companies, fake inspection certificates, and shipping records signed by names that no longer existed. Emily traced one company number with her fingertips. She had felt that embossed logo before. It matched the grease container she found outside the tunnel. Grace looked at her with growing concern. "Do you know what this means?" Emily nodded slowly. "The relay, the tunnel, the fake evidence. They're all connected." She fell silent. Then another memory surfaced. Years ago, while reviewing public accident reports after losing her own career, she had studied the explosion that killed Nathan's father and younger brother. One supplier listed in that investigation carried the very same registration code. Emily closed the folder carefully. This didn't start at Harbor Crown. Outside, a freight train rolled through the night, its distant whistle echoing across the harbor. Somewhere beyond those tracks, the people behind a 10-year-old tragedy were already preparing for one final move. Harbor Crown glittered beneath crystal chandeliers on opening night. Boston's most influential families, business leaders, judges, and charity patrons filled the ballroom while a string quartet played softly above the sound of distant waves. Nathan greeted each guest with measured courtesy, but his eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. She arrived anyway, guided by the familiar rhythm of her cane. She ignored the security guards blocking the front lobby and slipped through a service corridor she remembered from her inspections. Her heartbeat quickened as the building whispered around her. The evacuation speakers were wrong. The emergency signal carried a faint vibration she had never approved. Someone had redirected the escape routes. She hurried toward the ballroom. At the same instant, Nathan stepped onto the marble stage to welcome his guests. Emily heard a low metallic pulse beneath the floor. Without thinking, she rushed forward. Her shoulder struck Nathan's arm. His leather portfolio crashed onto the marble as startled guests gasped. For one suspended second, the room stood perfectly still. Vanessa pointed at Emily. "She's the one. She's planted the bomb." Several capos reached beneath their jackets. Black pistols appeared almost together. Emily couldn't see them. She only heard safeties click into place. "No," she called urgently. "Don't stand there. The floor." A man wearing a maintenance badge suddenly lunged toward her from the side. Nathan reacted before anyone else. He stepped directly between Emily and the attacker, his voice cutting through the panic with absolute authority. "Don't touch my wife." Every weapon froze. Every guard stopped moving. Even rival mafia leaders lowered their eyes. Nathan never looked away from the men surrounding Emily. "Nobody lays a hand on her." Emily stared toward the sound of his voice, confused and breathless. "Wife?" she whispered. Nathan answered without taking his eyes off the crowd. "Explain later." Emily knelt, pressing her fingertips against the polished marble. "There are 2 vibrations," she said. "One below this platform, another somewhere deeper inside the building." The ballroom fell silent again. Nathan realized the first device had only been a distraction. Whoever had built this trap intended to destroy far more than one man. And somewhere beyond the crowded ballroom, the real mastermind was already waiting for the second explosion. Nathan ordered his security team to guide the guests toward the nearest exits, but Emily raised one hand. "Not that way," she said firmly. "The emergency signal has been changed. It will send everyone toward the second device." Every face turned toward her. Nathan didn't hesitate. Follow Emily. The command stunned even his own captains. Using nothing but the echoes beneath the marble floor, Emily led hundreds of frightened guests through a service corridor while security searched the ballroom. The faint vibration beneath her feet grew weaker with every turn. "This way," she whispered. "The sound is cleaner." Nathan stayed beside her without touching her, trusting every instruction she gave. Meanwhile, Vanessa slipped away. Emily stopped outside the central control room. "The second signal is coming from behind this wall." Nathan forced the heavy steel door open. Inside, rows of monitors covered the room in cold blue light. Vanessa stood beside the control console. Ryan was there too. His hand rested inside his jacket. "So," Vanessa said calmly, "you really were smarter than I expected." Nathan stepped forward. "It's over." "No," she replied. "It started 10 years ago." Her smile never changed. "My father financed the explosion that killed yours. Your brother discovered our money laundering operation before he could expose it. Harbor Crown was supposed to erase the last witnesses, including you." Nathan's face hardened, but Emily quietly reached toward the nearest microphones panel. Ryan laughed. "She can't stop anything." Emily's fingers found the emergency broadcast switch. "I don't have to." She pressed it. Vanessa's confession echoed through every speaker in Harbor Crown. Guests froze in the hallways. Police officers outside stopped moving. Every member of Nathan's organization heard the truth at exactly the same moment. Vanessa's confidence vanished. "What did you do?" Emily answered softly. "I made sure everyone heard what you wanted hidden." Ryan suddenly pulled a pistol and grabbed Emily's arm. "Turn it off." Nathan took one careful step forward. "No." His voice was calm again. "Let her go." Ryan tightened his grip. Vanessa reached toward a small remote resting beside the control panel. One final button. One final bomb. Emily heard the faint click of her fingers touching the device, and she knew there was only one chance left to stop the ending they had planned for 10 years. Ryan tightened his grip on her arm. "Move, and he dies." Emily didn't struggle. She listened. The remote in Vanessa's hand emitted a faint electronic pulse every few seconds. It wasn't armed yet. It was searching for a signal. Emily lifted her white cane just enough to tap the polished floor. Once. Twice. Ryan glanced down for only an instant. It was enough. She swung the cane across his wrist. The remote slipped from Vanessa's hand at the exact moment Nathan lunged forward. His security team restrained Ryan while another officer kicked the remote across the room. The control panel flashed red. Emily followed the sound instead of the lights. "The isolation switch," she called. "Second row. Third lever from the left." Nathan pulled it down. The warning tone stopped. Silence filled the control room. Moments later, federal agents rushed inside after hearing Vanessa's confession broadcast throughout Harbor Crown. She looked around at the officers, the cameras, and the guests gathering outside the shattered doorway. For the first time, she understood there was nowhere left to hide. Nathan stood only a few feet away. For years, he had imagined facing the people responsible for destroying his family. He had believed revenge would finally quiet the pain. Instead, he looked at Emily. "What would you do?" she answered softly. "If you destroy them, they'll always own part of you. Let the truth finish what justice started." Nathan slowly lowered his weapon. "Take them into custody." No one argued. Several months later, Harbor Crown reopened with new leadership and a new purpose. The rehabilitation center Emily had once imagined became part of the project, offering training and opportunity to people too often overlooked. Nathan invited reporters only once. Standing beside Emily, he said, "This building still stands because she refused to give up when everyone else doubted her, including me." He turned toward her. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you when you needed me most." Emily smiled. "You trusted me when it mattered in the end. Now earn that trust every day after. 1 year later, they returned to the harbor at sunrise. Nathan placed a small ring in her hand instead of slipping it onto her finger. "I spent my life believing power could protect the people I loved," he said. "You taught me that respect protects them better." Emily laughed through quiet tears. "I didn't save you alone." "No," Nathan replied. "You simply showed me the way home." Together, they walked toward the water as the first ship's bell echoed across Boston Harbor, carrying not the sound of loss, but the promise of a future they had chosen together. Maybe that's why Nathan's final words mattered so much. After everything they survived, he didn't remember Emily as the woman who saved his empire. He remembered her as the person who helped him find his way home when power, fear, and grief had left him completely lost. This story reminds us that real trust is never created by promises alone. It grows through the quiet choices people make when believing someone is harder than doubting them. Today, think about one person you've been slow to trust because of appearances, fear, or old assumptions. Remember what Emily Carter proved. Sometimes the person everyone questions is the one who sees the truth before anyone else. If this story touched your heart, comment 1 below. And tell me this: have you ever met someone who completely changed your idea of what strength really looks like? I'd love to read your story. Until next time, take care of yourself, because the next journey may begin with one unexpected moment that changes everything.